We are back live with the Barca Football Podcast weekly. Today we're doing a day later because life gets in the way. It was my fault. I couldn't do it yesterday, so we're doing it today. And we're talking about the Real Betis primarily, right, Dev? And then we'll talk about some player performances, and then we have a couple of dramatic incidents, Dev, to discuss that are circulating in the media at the moment, and people are talking about it. So let's discuss all of that. But first of all, the Betis game, it was a 1-1 draw, not what we wanted because Real Madrid dropped points, so it was kind of imperative for us to win, even. But a draw is not the end of the world, Dev. Just first your general thoughts on the game. How did you see it? How was it for you? And then how big of a disaster is a draw?
I don't think it's a disaster at all. But yeah, of course, a win would have been good. But then a win is what we want in every single game. But that's
Yeah.
not going to happen, I think. And later we saw. I was looking at some of the numbers and the data. I think there's some interesting things about how Pellegrini set up. Something to say about Mark Bartra's performance as well. I think overall, yes, we did have chances. Yes, we could have scored goals, and that's true. But I think Pellegrini had a plan, and they stuck to the plan and made it difficult. Now, if you had said, 3 weeks back that we would be in a situation like this, and we are 4 points ahead of Madrid, we would have taken it absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now 4 and 6, is it going to be a huge difference? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But winning a game right now would have allowed us to lose a few games in the end. Um, and that's where the whole conversation is. And nobody thought that with Valencia it would be like Madrid would drop points, but they did in the last minute. The insane goal by Hugo Duro. So yeah, there's this feeling of we probably missed an opportunity. But that said, you will miss opportunities. They're playing a game every 3 days. You can't expect them to win all the time. It's not possible.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that's what we saw: a little bit of fatigue, a little bit of inability to close chances. I thought we
Yeah.
that was very evident, and a bit of selfishness. I think we are seeing this again and again. When people could pass the ball, they're not, or they're trying to do this themselves or whatever. So I think all in all, I'll take it. It's like it's not a bad deal at all, right? It's like
Hmm.
we are still 4 points ahead, and I think it's a good response. But yes, because nobody expected Madrid to drop points, I think everybody's like, "Oh wow, we could have been 6 points ahead," and all of
Yeah.
that. So yeah,
It's always gonna be like that, to be honest. It's a glass half full versus glass half empty kind of thing, right? Do you see it as 1 point gained or 2 points dropped? But at this point, I think you're right. Just getting that one extra point can mean all the difference because now we
yeah,
do have a cushion. We still have a cushion.
yeah.
Still lose, even if we lose the Classico, we still have
They
one
still have
more
one
point.
point. Yeah,
Yeah, one more point. Now, obviously, if we had
but I think
won,
both
we
teams will lose points even after this. I don't think Madrid's going to win all of them, and neither do we think
yeah.
we're going to win all of them.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
it's it's very possible. I think it's quite possible that you're right. And then, I mean, looking at it this way, it really is for me. It makes a huge difference, right? This 1 point can mean a lot. Now, obviously, with 6 points and a potential classical win, you get 9 points and you wrap up the league right then and there, right? That's one way to look at it. Now, we all kind of expected to win against Betis, but no one expected Madrid to lose against Valencia. So kind
exactly
of
that's what
both,
happened.
yeah, both things kind of panned out differently. That's
Balanced it
football for
out
you.
perfectly because if they had won,
Yeah,
and we
yeah,
had won, so I
yeah,
think,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's just
Yeah,
one
it's,
of those things.
at this point is more about how do we prevent that November December
Slump.
bad run. Yeah, yeah, slump, that fatigue, that obvious drop in performances. How do we prevent that from happening again? Because it does seem like for the last couple of games, our players are running on fumes, and especially the key players are not meant to be so exhausted, so running so much every game like Pedri. He was visibly tired, right? And I think even when you look at like Lamine Yamal, who might not run as much, that's due to his role and his own performances, but he is still. I think we're seeing how young he is, and we're seeing how this run of games, how this responsibility is impacting him as well. So I think now is Flick's biggest thing now is how do I prevent that December from happening again? Because if it happens again now, that's it. This is where we win everything or we lose everything part of the season, right? So managing this a bit better would be beneficial to say the least, because again we didn't see much rotation. We did some rotation, not much. Gavi played, and Gavi played well. We have to discuss Gavi as well. We do that
Absolutely.
a bit later on, yeah. But in terms of just the points gain and points lost, I think we're still in a net positive, Dev. I would agree with you. We still have that cushion now. We still have that a bit of advantage that can mean the world. But I do think that whoever wins the Copa del Rey Classico, the final, has a greater chance of actually winning the next La Liga Classico as well, because of the whole psychological thing. So getting into the next few games, it's okay to drop points here and there, especially when
I
Madrid
think we
drop
will. We will.
points.
All of us will
Yeah,
drop points.
so it's a kind of a mixed bag, but overall, I'm happy. I'm happy. It was
Yeah,
also a game that we could have won easily based on performances and chances. We could have won again. We didn't. That's life. That's football. But yeah, I mean, it is what it
you
is. It's
can't
not the
blame
end of the
them. You
world.
can't put this. Oh, this is your fault and your fault. It happens. Like sometimes, some days it doesn't happen. It didn't happen yesterday. And much as we like it or dislike it, or what have you, we got to make peace with it. And I don't think it's such a bad thing. Like 4 points cushion on top, with match days left, and we are fighting equally in all fronts across all competitions.
Yeah,
I think we could not have asked for more. I think we should be happy with what we have per se.
absolutely.
But we should look at some how the game played out. So should
Let's
we
go.
come back to some of the numbers and the data?
Yes, let's do that.
Let's
Let's
do
let's
that.
look at the data and see. Let's see if the eye test actually confirms the whole thing, because we were very dominant on the night. We did have a lot of the ball. We did have a lot of the chances. Real Betis, on the other hand, had like 2 shots on target or something like that.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But yeah, let's start with formations then.
So
What can you
formation,
expect?
like it's not, it's the classic Hansi Flick formation. I don't like. It's just like it didn't really change. He kept the same. Pellegrini also almost kept it same throughout the game, and you can see at different stages of time. It wasn't that they were shifting shape or anything. They were holding, and they had a game plan, and they were sticking to it. But the fun thing that happens is when you compare Barca's pass map with Betis's pass map, I think that's where it's interesting. This
Hmm.
is nothing different. This is nothing new. If you think about how Barca play, I think
Yeah.
this is, look at the concentration in the center, and then look at how there were. Um, this is how generally we have played. The wings have stretched. There is good combination between these three. There's great combination between these four, and that's how Barca try to control and then feed through the center, and then try to overwhelm,
Hmm.
and then create chances, and that's what they have been doing very good at.
Yeah.
But and I will take you right to this chart. Sorry, it's for some reason. Look at look at Betis' setup. It's a very unique setup,
Yeah.
pass map wise. But what it does tell you that they had an enormous effort in cutting down the central areas, right through, and also in a way where they could circulate the ball and get it out, and not let Barca have that dominance that they generally have in just passing amongst each other, finding those half spaces and moving on. And I think to an extent, Pellegrini was actually successful in doing that. If you see the game, not that we didn't create chances, we did create chances,
Yeah.
but overall, this wasn't an easy game. This wasn't one of those games where it was like from the get go we are creating millions of chances and things like that. It wasn't that simple. But Tom,
Hmm.
your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Betis are not an easy team to play against, even though you wouldn't necessarily say so when you compare Barca's achievements and performances so far and Betis' performances so far. But they are not an easy team to play against. And I think they did their job well. To your point, yes. And this pass map just tells us how big of an importance was for them to go around Barca and go into space and go wide, and exploit those areas for Barcelona. To be fair, Barca did press really well. At one
They did.
point, Betis couldn't hold the ball for more than like 5 seconds or so, and they already, they would lose it, and Barca would attack again. Whereas Barca's pass map does tell us a couple of interesting things as well. If you can go back just a
Yep.
little bit, Dev. Yeah. So again, huge accumulation down the center of the pitch, which is what we see, and then the thing is, a lot of this comes down to Lamine Yamal, right?
Yep.
Because Lamine Yamal is, especially in this setup where you have Ferran Torres instead of a Raphinha or even a creative left winger. This is why people keep saying, okay, we need a creative left winger, is because everything falls on Lamine Yamal's shoulders, and you can see the connections. So many thick lines lead to Lamine Yamal because we're trying to get the ball to Lamine at all
Somehow.
times, and
Yeah.
then it's up to him to create something, do something that moves us forward. And then another thing is Lewandowski and Ferran Torres. Look at their positionings. They're
So
basically
narrow, so close to each other.
so close to each other. It basically means, okay, these two players are occupying the same role. They have the same positioning. They have the same tasks. Now, how beneficial is that in the long run? Because, okay, yes, one can dismark the other inside the box, but in the build up phase, in the second phase of our attack, it's not as beneficial because you have two players basically in the same spot, and they're not really providing you with many passing options,
And that's what we
and that
happened yesterday.
and
If you
that's
see,
exactly, yeah, exactly. That's what happens, and Barca do have to go wide very often because the center is compact and packed with players. Now, Barca don't mind playing through blocks, playing through congested areas. Now, sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. And when someone like Lamine has a night off, as much as that is possible, but he did have a kind of a night off when we look at it from that perspective. And when that happens, we struggle, right? It feels like so much of what we do depends on how well does Lamine Yamal perform in the final third, and how much can he actually show that all the responsibility we put on him. And for a 17-year-old to have so much agency and responsibility week in, week out, like he's played like 10 games in the last couple of weeks, it's a bit too much. I think it's catching up to him and the rest of the squad.
probably it's
And
also not the right thing for us to do. I
yeah,
mean,
exactly. Hmm.
there are many problems with this. Like he's just 17 years old. You're getting him that much of attention. Yes, he is a generational talent. Yes, he's all of that. But somewhere it's going to, yeah, these all have impact. They will start thinking that, okay, I am like, I'm inevitable, right? And
Yeah,
I think somewhere that balance and adjustment needs to be there. But I don't think we have the players. So obviously, Flick uses what he has, and the same thing
yeah.
with De La Fuente in the Spanish side. But for a 17-year-old kid to play as much as he is, Mark, he's amazing, he's incredible, he's having the season of his life or whatever. I still think it's way too much at this moment.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest argument when it comes to, do we need another creative left winger, someone who's willing to take on his marker, someone who's willing to have the ball at his feet and do something, some sort of magic with the ball at his feet. It's not because, okay, we are so bereft of any creativity. No, we have creative players, but to have a 17-year-old be the whole foundation of that weekend, to be the only focal point, creative point in that front three, it is a bit much. Now, if Lamine was a couple of years older, a bit more experienced, a bit more mature, a bit more developed into or grown into his body a bit more, with a bit more resistance to his body as well, because now we are in danger of maybe breaking him. We don't know, right? He might break if we could keep doing this. Now, it would be a different story if that wasn't the case, but however it is. So I think the biggest argument to us actually buying another creative player is that, right? Just share the burden, share the load with Lamine Yamal, and don't force him into being that guy, the guy, every single week. I think that is at the moment more so the need of the profiles, the squad, is the need to just help Lamine Yamal. I think that's the biggest point at this point.
Yeah, and as you can see, the point between Leva and Ferran has been picked up by people who, apart from us, who have been watching the game,
Hmm.
and they're also pretty, they're asking the same question: why did Flick do that? Because I thought it took away Ferran's efficacy to an extent, and he couldn't provide the breakthrough that we were
Hmm.
obviously looking for. Leva was Leva, but yeah, if you have two of them in the same space, almost, what's the point? Because then Balde, as the point
Yeah.
says, he has to occupy the whole of the left side, and he's not really good at that. As we know, he likes inverting in and what have you. So I think there were some things that affected our usual efficacy or chance creation, velocity that we talk about. But yeah, some of those things
Yeah.
definitely did happen. So let's keep going and look at some of the other data. And this kind of tells you the combinations, right? And let's look at the people who really put in a shift. Here's Pau Kubarsi at 106. With
Hmm.
Ronald Araujo also not bad at 84. I didn't really think Araujo would be that much. I think it was a like yeah, the goal people have commented that it was probably his lapse or what have you. But I think
Yeah,
overall, I think it was a solid performance from him. He might have whatever. But then again, look at Pedri, 90 minutes. This, I mean, it's a wonder he's still standing firm. But this has been a long, tiring season for him, and he's still playing game after game, match after match. And these are some solid numbers in terms of contribution. So 90 from Pedri, 85 from Frankie De Jong, and if you then go down and look at this side, that's just hidden in
hmm,
the. Let's try and remove the hide and then
yeah. There we go.
numbers. Okay, and then you see again 92, 79, 84. So the more you, I mean, some solid numbers, some solid shifts put in at this
Hmm.
time of the season, where in 2 days time we'll have to play Dortmund again, and it
Yeah,
does tire you out. But it does also clarify that while these players are carrying Barca more or less throughout the season, the efficacy, the that final ball, that final key pass just didn't happen today.
yeah. I think. I mean, when we got the chances, we didn't really finish them. There were quite a few, but from this past maps and or the past combinations, you always look at how well do our players interact with each other. How well does our backline, which is the foundation of our build-up phase, how well do they interact with the midfielders, the key players in the midfield? So when we look at Kubarsi, his highest connection is Pedri. So that's always a good sign, right? So Kubarsi is very, very good at accessing Pedri and getting the ball from our first phase into the second phase and getting Pedri on the ball as much as possible. And then again, the combination between Pedri and Frenkie de Jong, for example, is again very, very good. So that means that those players have interacted a lot, which you always want to do as a team that plays through the middle, that wants to have their best players on the ball as much as possible. This is a good sign, right? And then we look at Lamine Yamal, who has the biggest combinations with Lamine Yamal. Again, Kunde of the obvious one, and we can look at, let's see who else. Number six, so Gavi. Gavi was very good
Gavi
at
was
accessing
nine,
Lamine.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So Gavi was good at accessing Lamine Yamal as well. So these things are very important, right? And from that perspective, Barca did
I
everything
mean,
right.
look
They
at
did.
Gavi, 66, not a bad shift.
Mhm.
12 with Kunde, 7 with Pedri.
Yes,
So
it, it
he
would be. Yeah, it would be
kind
interesting
of
to see
went,
how.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, to your point, he is more involved, and I think he still plays number 10, right?
kind
And
of, yeah.
we keep saying, okay, if he's the number 10, that destroys the whole Gavi profile. But it felt a bit different, right? It was a 10 on paper, but then it was in terms of performances, Gavi was more involved, and the number of passes, to your point, there, via 66 is quite high, right? I mean, on
Quite
the
high.
higher end,
Yeah,
on the higher end, it's not as much as I know Pedri's 90 or Frankie de Jong's 85 or let alone Pau Kubarsi's 106. It's not near that, but it's still on the upper side. And I think it was a slight tweak in the system by Hansi Flick again, who said, "Okay, I'm gonna play Gavi as a 10, but I know if Gavi plays a traditional Olmo or Fermin 10, quote unquote, he's not as effective. So maybe I'll tweak it a bit, let him have much more freedom. He will drop deeper, get to touch the ball a bit more often, and that way maybe he's a bit better." And lo and behold, Gavi was man of the match. I think he was, and I
it was
think
probably the
this,
best game that he has played after his
yeah,
injury. I think it was really good today.
yeah. So,
Really
so,
good.
so, yeah, absolutely. I think it was a slight tweak that kind of maximized Gavi, and I do think that there's a reason why Flick continues playing him there, despite the obvious deficiencies, because Gavi does have those attacking instincts, and even for the goal that Gavi scored, look at the movement, look at the finish. Even I think Gavi has that in him to be a very good final third player. But the thing is, you want him to be more than just that. We want to be involved in more than just one phase of the game. But yes, there is a reason why Flick wants him higher up, because he does give you something unique. Now, well, now maybe not unique, but something that's very, very good about his profile. That's the final third attacking instincts, which he does have.
Absolutely. And let's look at a little bit of Betis's pass map, because I wanted to call out a
Hmm.
couple of players I think who are pretty. I found pretty interesting
Hmm.
in proceedings and so on. But if you look into, um, it was just a solid. Fornals was good. I think Lo Celso was good. I thought, um, overall Mark Bartra had a very good defensive shift. It might not have created lots of passing, but he did shut down quite effectively a lot of attacks that came through. Uh, what who stood out for you, Dom, when you think about Betis?
I mean, it has to be Mark Bartra, unfortunately, but it's more about the defensive shift. I think overall, like 9 passes doesn't seem like much, but then that's the case with the whole Betis team because Barca were suffocating in their possession, right? And they were very, very good in getting the ball off Betis very quickly. So they didn't have a chance to actually do much in possession. Okay, yes, they scored the goal, obviously, to draw the game, but in terms of the off the ball, the duels, do we have the duels here, Dev? I
I
am
do,
very
I do,
interested to
I
see.
do. The next chart
Right.
has the duels. Yeah, you'll
Hmm.
see. It's
Hmm. Okay,
interesting,
so
actually.
yeah, yeah, I would love to see that. So we'll talk about that a bit later. But yeah, I think Mark Bartra. Okay, let's see that. Mark Bartra's duels, 8 duels, and most of them won. Right, so he
Yep.
won a duel. His only duel with Lamia, he won it. He won most of his duels with Robert Lewandowski. Split down the middle against Ferran Torres, and then he lost the solitary duel against Fermin Lopez. Now, that's a solid performance because he kept Lamine Yamal whenever he was in contact with him. He kept him quiet, and then also he won most of his duels with Robert Lewandowski. Absolutely critical. I think both of those players to shut them down is crucial for Betis, and he did that. And
But
then
it's not just one of them. Like if you look into all of them, right? Look at
yeah,
their dual percentage rates. Like look at Gavi, right? Across
mhm,
all of them, right? All of them, literally almost all of them had a duel with Gavi at some point or the other. Like
yeah,
literally all of them. Like if you, if you see that, right? That's pretty weird. And then if you look into the bottom half, and then you look at okay, Perod, Nathan, Mark Bartra, Aitor, Johnny, Pablo Fornals, Lo Celso, Anthony, all of them in their about like if they had 14, there are 7 7 7. You can see the 50,
yeah,
it's almost 50-50. So
yeah.
I think as a team, they really dueled well on the ground and they won the duels. And
Hmm.
that's where Barca didn't get the freedom that they generally get to create a lot of chances.
Hmm.
And that's where I think Pellegrini had a plan and kind of worked
Hmm.
against
Hmm.
this Barca. Like it was like we wouldn't have expected it, but he did his homework. He came and just this dual map shows you that there was a plan for every single player to be engaged and map the Barca players on the other side and really engage with them. And that comes out very clearly on this dual map.
Yeah, I mean, Gavi, I mean, on top of just being everywhere and dueling with everyone, as you say, he won most of those duels. I mean,
Yep.
the data here shows he won most of those duels. He was absolutely gigantic in that midfield. Actually, not just midfield, he was everywhere. That's the thing with
He was
Gavi.
there and he won. But the point is that the fact that an entire team is engaging, that there's
Yeah,
a plan behind them, right?
yeah,
It's not like, you know.
yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
the dual map was pretty interesting in terms of,
Hmm. Yeah.
how the team, but go ahead.
Yeah, that was my next point. But also look at Frankie De Jong. He won every duel that he engaged, and there was not that many, only 5, but he still won every single one of them. The same with actually Pau Cubarsí was outstanding, and Balde also did really well against Aitor. He really had a fun time there dueling
Yeah,
against him. But overall, yes, Betis knew what they had to do. They had to shut down Lamine Yamal, and they
and they
did
did.
so fairly well. I mean, it was also a bit due to Lamine's own performance. Like I don't know, decision making wise, and even the execution of some of the things. We are very very lenient with him because we say okay, he's 17, all of that. But yes, I think not one of the best games from him overall, which is to be expected at this point. So Flick has to decide, okay, maybe I keep his ego in check and I say, okay, now you go to the bench now, just rest for a
Sit for
bit,
a while. Yeah,
and
sit
yeah,
for a
even
while.
even if we lose points, I'm just gonna look at the bigger picture, at the long form, the long term thing, and then I'll put you back in once we have rested you a bit. So maybe that's the next play, but we'll see.
Maybe that
Yeah, yeah,
it'll be
yeah.
interesting to see how that pans out because yes, lately it has seemed like He
Yeah,
had
yeah.
a little bit of that, I won't say attitude, but it just feels like, that air about him, which is not a good or bad thing, but it's just one of those things. Okay, let's look at the XG and the opportunities. So obviously Barcelona created lots of chances, and the first half there were quite a lot, and the second half not so many. And this is one of the games where they didn't really come close to the number of opportunities that they created. Generally, they overachieved their XG. This
Yeah.
was a map where they couldn't. And look at those numbers from Lamine, from Ferran, and from Kunde. It's just surprising, like the number of goal scoring opportunities Kunde creates these days. And then from Nathan had one chance, he converted, and you can see like when it comes to it, like the graph is quite simple. Like Barca is in ascendancy throughout the game, but they couldn't make it count. And
Mhm.
at this level, making it count is what that matters.
Yeah, I mean, the XG tells you the story of the game more or less. I mean, we're always very wary of using XG in single games because it's a bit, it can be deceptive. But in this case, I think Barca did dominate both the eye test and the data. It was just the finishing that didn't work out for us in the end. But let's look at more data. Possession wise, again, we did have like the vast majority of the ball.
Massive
Quite,
majority.
yeah,
Yeah.
quite accurate. Not many long balls, which is again, it's a good thing because we do more damage with well, it's actually debatable. We do a lot of damage with our long balls too. Um, but then the recoveries, that was, I think that was a good thing as well, or a very evident
It's
thing.
the recoveries and duels, I think, where Betis went toe to toe with us in terms
Hmm.
of just performance. The
Hmm.
rest, we are pretty much ahead of them in almost every aspect of the game. But it's
Hmm.
recoveries and duels where they literally went at it, and
Yeah,
they
yeah.
matched us to an extent, I would say.
And all of this with another caveat in mind, which is no Isco, right? Isco is a
Mm.
big part of, maybe not defensively as much, but offensively,
It
and
would have
and
been,
yes,
it would have been a
yeah,
handful. Like if he
yeah,
was playing, it would
hmm,
have been a handful.
hmm,
Absolutely, it would have been a
yeah,
handful.
yeah,
So we were lucky that way that he was injured and couldn't, take part. But yeah, I mean, those are the numbers. So that's some of the numbers to talk about. What happened at the game.
hmm,
Uh,
hmm,
yeah, would have been nice to win it, but as we
yeah,
said, these things happen, and we didn't. And now we have 4 points and a lot of other games to play, and a lot of them will be difficult because they won't be easy.
yeah,
So I personally would still think that there are a couple of chances where we can lose points, at least
yeah,
two. I think you can never comment on a Classico before it happens. So you
yeah.
just keep that outside. But even beyond the Classico, I think there are Leganes will not be easy. They are fighting relegation. They will be up for a fight. And they
Hmm.
have been difficult for most of the other teams as well. So Leganes is not going to be easy. So a lot of these games are difficult that are coming up, and then we'll have to also deal with the Copa del Rey's and the Champions League and all of that. So um, um, and some of the behavior-led stuff that we have been lately seeing in the team, that's also cropping up. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I do
Hmm.
think both us and Madrid are going to lose points. I don't think it's a straight win till the end kind of a run from here.
Yeah, far from it. And it all started back in December. It all started with the Real Betis, and I think it a draw with the Real Betis. I don't remember. I think it was, yeah. And then we did lose to Leganes, if I'm not wrong. It was a 1-0 defeat or something. I think, or maybe I'm getting that wrong. I
Yes.
think we did. I think we lost to them first time around, and it was the same reason as as these lapses in performances are happening now, which was fatigue. I think that was the biggest thing. So how does, again, all Flick has to do now is optimize for the rest of the season because a full force rest of the Barca destroys Real Betis last night. Right? They would have destroyed Real Betis, and even this Barca, the tired Barca, had chances to put like 3 or 4 goals past Real Betis, but the fatigue, both mental and physical, plays a huge part. We always say that, guys. It affects how you perform,
They
how
won
you
1-0. You're right, absolutely right. In December
right.
when they played, yeah.
See, there you go. Yeah, so we lost Leganes already, and I don't know about Real Betis, but I don't think we drew them first time around. I don't remember that one, but
Good. Yeah, I mean, if you watch, I don't know
It's
whether you watch Leganes Real Madrid. I think they should have won that game. To be honest, I mean, I won't go into
mm,
refereeing
yeah,
and all of that stuff. I'll keep that outside. But two goals, and they were pretty much cruising till the last minute. So
mhm.
it is not going to be easy with Leganes at all.
No, no, no.
And so there are a few tough ones out there. It's not just this one. So yes, a win would have helped us against some of those, uh, tough assignments. But it is what it
Yeah,
is. This is also a great team, and then they came to win, and they came to play, and they played.
they played. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a shame. Overall, yes, I think we had it in us to win that game, but at the same time, as you keep saying, these things will happen, and we will drop points. Now, the big thing is we don't have that many games left to play, right? So, well, like 8 games or something, or 7 or 8 games, and this cushion will still help us. It allows for one more blip, um, or one blip and then one draw potential. We'll see. I mean, hopefully it doesn't come to that, but it's difficult to expect this Barca side to keep playing the way they're playing without rotating and without easing off the intensity and still win all the games that are left, because we still have a lot of games to be played. Champions League, Copa del Rey final. I mean, Flick will have to optimize for that, and somehow maybe accept that, okay, here and there I will risk dropping points, but we'll see. He doesn't seem to be in favor of that much, right? He would rather go all out and try and secure every game, which is, fair point. But can this squad actually survive such an ordeal? That remains to be seen. Um, but yes, we do have one more question between Fermin and
Let me
Gabi.
Yeah,
Oh
there's a
yeah,
question now, but let's talk about this Rafinha situation. And this was weird, but I'm playing it off Twitter, so because it's visible what's happening here. So he's obviously upset with something that the linesman has said, and he's pissed, and that's a literally a fight with Ter Stegen. He's the captain of your team. Okay, you may like
yeah,
him or may not like him, but that just looks really really bad. And it didn't end here because it continued with Flick as well, and he's the coach.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
don't know
yeah.
what pissed him off so much, but this is not the first time. I think this is the second or the third time that we are seeing this, and that's a problem. That's a real problem.
It could be, especially you can't do that to the coach or your captain or anyone. I mean, in your team, it just doesn't
It
show.
doesn't show off well, no?
Yeah,
Especially
it
when
doesn't.
you're
Yeah,
getting scouts for like Ballon d'Or or whatever, and people are talking
yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
it.
I,
It is
I,
just
I I do
weird.
wonder how Flick reacts to this, because Flick is very strict when it comes to
It's very
discipline,
strict.
and
Yeah,
if you're late, you're dropped from the squad, right? We saw that with Koundé, but how does Flick react to this now? Because obviously you want your players to be passionate about the game, you want your players to always want to win, but then you have to do this with respect, especially at Barca, because we do keep saying that we
why
are a
would he
club that
fight
has.
with Ter Stegen like this? It makes no sense. It absolutely no makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, emotions are high. That part I can understand. Emotions are high. The game didn't go your way. You're not really as effective at all times as you wish to be. You want to be the hero. You want to be the one to save your team. You couldn't do that. So I get that. I get the emotions, but you can't do this to your coach and your captain. You just can't. Especially at Barca, where we hold our morals and our values very high, and Raphinha, as one of the biggest players that we have on the team, he has to be able to show those values. I wouldn't say the most, because he is also, and he's not a veteran, but he's an older player in a squad full of youngsters, and he has to be an example for them as well, right? In terms of playing on the
This just
pitch, but
doesn't
also the
create.
behavior. Yeah, yeah.
Doesn't
So
give
I
that,
would,
that family vibe that like
yeah,
you talk to Flick, he's always saying it's a family,
yeah.
we're all together. This just causes issues around that narrative completely, and that's a problem. But yeah, that's just a small clip that I picked up from Twitter just to show what's happening out there.
Mhm.
But it's been weird. Is it a little bit of that Ballon d'Or talk going to his head, or is it like this, or is he like this, or because I don't recall something like that in Leeds. He's
Uh,
passionate though.
no.
When Leeds survived relegation, he did that whole thing across the whole ground on his own. So he's obviously full of passion. But what do you feel, Tom?
I think he is passionate, and he does wear his heart on his sleeve. I think, being Brazilian, I think that's also a part of how he expresses himself. I think they are very passionate about everything they do, especially football. I think when it comes to football, they are. We know that they are the top of the top usually, and the creme de la creme. But I think it's also because of their emotional side, because of their passion and how they perceive football. That's what makes them so special in playing football, but also it means that it's a huge part of their lives. Obviously, it is, and I think he gets frustrated, and it also seeped from the whole Argentina game, and also yes, I would say. The whole Ballon d'Or shouts and the hype and success that he's been experiencing lately, it does just amplify all of that to to a millionth degree or something. I don't know, but Flick will have to keep it in check because yes, Flick, as you say, Flick keeps saying that this is a family, this is something. We do have to keep ourselves grounded despite the hype. As Flick said, the treble is on our mind, success is on our mind, but nothing's won yet. So the same goes for Rafinha's individual performances, but also his contribution to the collective. He has to remain calm because now is the most important part of the season, and he can't lose his head at this point. Right? He's been superb, outstanding, arguably the best player in our squad in terms of the output. So far, but now is the time to actually show that he is worthy of the armband and the crest on his chest, and he has to show the Barca values, um, you know, all the time,
Absolutely.
and
I would,
especially
I would, I would, I
before.
would, I would kind of agree. Yeah. So let's take the question, and the question is between Fermin and Gavi. Who do you guys start as a third midfielder against Dortmund? Tom, why don't you go forward?
Yeah, it's depends. So yesterday's Gavi was obviously a monster in the midfield, and I think this tweaked number 10 role does suit him but bit more than the normal number 10 role. I think Borussia are quite fragile defensively. I would say there's a possibility of hurting them down that middle, and I think going with Furman, I would potentially go with Furman because just to add that extra box presence, extra attacking impetus, and then I think we can play through them with Frankie and Pedri, and then we can have Furman at the end of the chances. Now, if Flick wants to have the same Gavi as yesterday, he can replicate that. Is Gavi ready for these two games back to back to have the same um, quality of performances back to back? Is he ready for something like that? Then yes, you could argue that, okay, you can play Gavi in that 10, but I think the 10 still suits Furman more than Gavi until we find the perfect formula and perfect this formula that we saw yesterday. Until we can replicate that formula sustainably, I think Furman and Olmo would be ahead of Gavi in number 10 role. Obviously, Olmo is out injured at the moment, so he's not an option, but I think Furman would be my shot at the moment.
I would probably agree with you on that. But it'll be interesting to see how Flick plays because it's a two-legged tie.
Yeah,
Um, so obviously there are those things to keep in mind, and the away goal factor no longer exists anymore. So I think there'll be a lot of permutation combinations based on which they are going to set it up. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. And guys, we'll be doing a Dortmund preview, so do
yeah,
join, and we'll be talking a lot about that game and what are we expecting from that game and so on and so forth. So hope to see you there. But okay, so that's the game versus Betis, and we talked about Raphinha and some of the
yeah.
so-called skirmishes that everybody's talking about. Is there anything else before we wrap this up?
I don't think so. I think it was overall a great performance for Barca. Just the finishing touches are not there, and the fatigue is the biggest thing about Barca at the moment because not only is there accumulation of games, but also the style of play does affect how we perform long term. Because even though these players are young, they're fit, they're athletic, they are professionals, it's still very difficult, especially when there's very little rotation. And I think the game management or the substitutions management is still the thing to look at this part of the season especially, and we'll see how Flick. That's my biggest interest, right? How does Flick manage that? Because now we can't really afford to experiment too much because all the games are so important. But then again, you will have to, otherwise you risk losing everything, right? Because we
Yeah,
can lose everything in a couple of games. That's it. That's the danger of this
from
latter
everything
stage
to
of
nothing.
this season. Exactly, because now we're flying high. We're like, okay, we can win the treble, but you lose the Copa final, you lost the Copa, you lose against Dortmund, you're out. I mean, it's these games are now. It's so critical. It's so dangerous to experiment, but again, you I don't know. It's a thing where you'll be forced to, or you might suffer in the long run. So we'll see how Flick reacts.
Absolutely. So that's it, guys. We try to cover the Betis game because we could not cover it when the game happened, unlike what we
Yeah,
generally do. So we thought we would
yeah,
do it now. And obviously, there's a lot to look forward this week with the games coming right, left, and center. So next up, Dortmund. Obviously, we'll be
yeah,
there before the game and after the game. So please do join us. And in the meantime, we are continuing the coverage that we started of, players that have
yeah,
been linked to us or players that we have been talking about whether we can purchase
yeah.
or not. So next up is Benjamin Chesko. So do take a look. We're doing some content around him. Dom wrote a wonderful piece on him. If you haven't read it, do read it. And then there's a video that's coming out. So hopefully those who like the video form of content, you might enjoy that. And with that, guys, stay safe, take care, and see you on Wednesday.
What do you
Visca.
say?
Take care.
Marsa.